directives. What are they? And very importantly for our purposes, how does one execute advance directives in accord with Catholic moral teaching? How does one apply the principles we've been talking about, the moral principles, to filling out an advance directive? Now, the term advance directive refers to any legal document you can use to guide healthcare decisions should you ever become incapacitated and unable to make those decisions directly. Now, even if you execute an advance directive, as long as you are mentally able to make the decisions, you should be consulted directly, not the document. So the document's only go into effect when you are incapacitated to make those decisions directly. There are two basic types of advance directives: the living will and the durable power of attorney for health care. Have any of you here executed either of those? Okay, a few of you have. Okay, many have not. Now, let me say something about advance directive forms. There is no national living will or durable power of attorney for health care form. These forms are instituted state by state, and there can be some variation from state to state in what the forms look like. The state legislation will set certain requirements for a living will and a durable power of attorney for health care in that particular state. But even within that framework for a particular state, there can be various forms. I passed out to you forms which have been developed by the Medical Moral Commission of the Archdiocese of Dubuque, with the specific intent of reflecting Catholic moral teaching. Now, if you want to, you can use the forms as such, or you can use these forms as a model to guide you in executing other advanced directive forms. So this is just an example of what can be done, nothing more. Now, I mentioned that the living will, durable power of attorney for health care are instituted state by state. And if you look at the living will form for different states, there are variations in it in terms of the scope of what is covered. In Iowa, the scope of the living will is very narrow. It applies only when death is expected in a very short period of time, or if you are permanently unconscious. And the living will directs life-sustaining treatments not to be used when you're expected to die shortly or permanently unconscious. Now, if you will look at the living will form that I passed out to you, yes. In Iowa, it's called Declaration Relating to the Use of Life-Sustaining Procedures. Living will under.
It's inside a packet. It's inside the packet under.
Yeah, I'm sorry that the directions should have been separate, okay, and the living will should have been reproduced on its own. But I didn't reproduce these packets. Everybody got it?
Yes.
Okay. The first paragraph is what you find on the Iowa Bar Association form. The second paragraph was added in by the Medical Moral Commission of the Dubuque Archdiocese to make this form consistent with Catholic teaching on the issue of medically assisted nutrition and hydration for those who are permanently unconscious. Now, how did we get to this? The Iowa Living Will covers two situations. First of all, when someone's imminently dying, when they're expected to die in a relatively short period of time. And as I mentioned before, if you look at the ethical and religious directives for Catholic healthcare facilities, services. In there, explicitly given as an example of when you don't have to use artificial nutrition and hydration is when someone is imminently dying. Because as I explained, you're likely to make them more uncomfortable in their dying process. It will be more burdensome for them than beneficial, okay? So, in terms of the Iowa Living Will, speaking about foregoing life-sustaining treatments, including medically assisted nutrition hydration, for someone who's expected to die within a relatively short period of time, that's okay. But where the problem comes in is in dealing with someone who is permanently unconscious. And by that, they're probably referring to something called the vegetative state, if you remember the Terry Schiavo case. Okay, that's the kind of situation we're referring to. Now, according to Catholic teaching, when someone is unconscious like that, even if they're determined to be permanently unconscious, highly likely that they're ever going to regain consciousness, the very fact that they are permanently unconscious is not sufficient reason to withdraw the tube feeding, because the tube feeding is considered part of the normal care to the sick person, just like you keep them clean and you turn them to prevent venom sores and the like. To withdraw tube feeding from someone who is permanently unconscious, it would have to be the case either that it just doesn't work anymore, or that in some way it's become excessively burdensome for the person, say by causing infections and the like. Okay? So that's the reason we've added in the second paragraph. If I should be in a state of permanent unconsciousness, from which to a reasonable degree of medical certainty there can be no recovery, it is my desire that medically assisted nutrition hydration not be administered only if this procedure cannot reasonably be expected to prolong my life or would be excessively burdensome for me or cause me significant physical discomfort. So again, that second paragraph was added in to render this form consistent with church teaching on medically assisted nutrition and hydration for those who are permanently unconscious in the vegetative state. Yes?
How do they know at the time that PEG tube is placed, though, that they're going to remain in a permanent state? So,
Okay.
you know, there you've got the problem. They've already inserted the tube feeding, thinking they're going to recover, and then, boom, now things have changed. There's been a progression of their neurological process, and they're not going to recover. But then you place the tube, so it's got to stay.
Okay. Again, we can withdraw treatments.
But you can't take away the tube. Correct? You can't stop the tube feed.
Just because, okay, according to church teaching, just because they're permanently unconscious. But if other things happen, like it doesn't work anymore, or if it's causing physical problems, there are complications in the tube, say causing pneumonia, or, for example, or it's causing bleeding, infected, and the like, you can withdraw the feeding tube. Okay, that's church teaching. Okay, now say in the case of someone diagnosed as unconscious. Let's take the vegetative state. Now, when somebody is first diagnosed in the vegetative state, you don't know if they're going to wake up or not. If they've been in the vegetative state for a month, they're said to be in a persistent vegetative state. They're said to be in a permanent vegetative state when it becomes very unlikely that they will ever wake up. And when you can determine the permanency of the vegetative state depends upon what causes the brain injury that brings that about. If it's a non-traumatic brain injury like a heart attack or something, you should wait, I think, about 3 months. But if it's a traumatic brain injury, say from a car accident, you need to wait a year before you can say they are permanently unconscious. It's highly, highly unlikely they're going to wake up. Now, in terms of medical procedures, if they're just diagnosed as in a vegetative state, medical care is going to continue to see if they'll wake up. We give them that chance. Okay, but say you've reached the stage where they are diagnosed as permanently unconscious, that's when the question arises of continuing to use life-sustaining treatments. Okay. Now again, the way the Iowa Living Will legislation is written, you can interpret it to mean that once someone is diagnosed as being permanently unconscious, you can remove the feeding tube. But that's not church teaching. Even though someone's permanently unconscious, you continue normal care for them, which in the Catholic view includes, okay, the tube feeding. But you can discontinue tube feeding for someone who's permanently unconscious. Again, if something happens where the tube feeding isn't going to work, because say it's become infected or something like that, or if it becomes excessively burdensome to the patient, is causing complications, say the person to aspirate and that kind of thing. Okay. Is that clear? Yes. Okay.
Wouldn't over time the tube feeding be considered burdensome, but for financial reasons?
Okay, it's not all that expensive.
To keep someone in a hospital and keep them alive?
Okay, now, what's important to remember is that the Vatican has placed nutrition and hydration in the category of the normal care due to the sick person. So they distinguish that, say, from ventilators and chemotherapy, radiation therapy, kidney dialysis. Okay? So since they consider it part of the normal care due to the sick person, you always need to provide it in their view, okay, unless these other things happen, where it won't work or becomes excessively burdensome. Okay, just to say you would continue to turn somebody, no matter what their condition, to prevent bed sores. That's part of the normal care due to the sick person. Okay, yes?
Just to recap, the first part, which is the Iowa law, the Iowa law says that you may discontinue hydration and nutrition if they're in a permanently vegetative state. But Catholic law says that you may not unless there are certain qualifications that you have to meet.
Exactly. You got it exactly.
Which would that include like dialysis and?
Okay, no. Now, that's a very important question to raise. Again, the Vatican has decided that nutrition and hydration, no matter how you give it to somebody, is part of the normal care to the sick person. They have not said that about dialysis or ventilators or chemotherapy or resuscitation. So those are completely separate issues, even for people who are permanently unconscious. So according to Catholic teaching, you could decide, if I'm permanently unconscious, I don't want dialysis initiated. Okay, you could say that in accordance with Catholic teaching. So that's a different kind of thing than what we're dealing with nutrition and hydration.
Is that covered in the directive? I don't know, but is that covered in the directive then, where you can say that you don't want?
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Okay, well, so this is a fine point, a technical point of Catholic teaching. Is it clear? Okay. So again, this is one respect in which we've tweaked the standard Iowa Living Will form to bring it into conformity with Catholic moral teaching. And again, we work with an attorney on that who is a specialist in healthcare law, and making this emendation is perfectly legal. In fact, if you even look at the instructions on the Iowa bar form, they say you can make restrictions with respect to medically assisted nutrition and hydration, so perfectly legal. Okay? Okay. Now,
I have a question.
yes.
So we can use this form in order to, we don't have to use the form the hospital would give us. This is the form that we could use.
Yes, yes, it
All
is
right.
legally
Or you
valid.
can amend the form that they give you in writing that.
Exactly, you got it, exactly. Exactly. The only thing is, if you just take out the second paragraph and put it on another form, just be sure that the person understands the rationale for doing that. And again, in the introductory section, we've explained all of this. Now, again, looking at the rest of the living will form, you can either, to make it legal, you can either have it notarized or signed by 2 witnesses. And there are some restrictions on who can serve as witnesses. The person has to be at least 18. A witness cannot be somebody who's providing health care for you or an employee of a health care provider. Well, why? Because we don't want it to look like some healthcare professional is forcing you to make these decisions. We want to avoid that kind of impression. Okay. Also, you can revoke a living will at any time. You can change your mind if you want. Okay. Now, just looking at that form, do you have any more questions about what's called the living will? Yes.
Can you add things to living will? Special instructions or whatever?
Okay, that's more proper for the durable power of attorney for healthcare that I'm going to talk about now. Again, by Iowa law, the scope of a living will is very, very limited.
Okay.
Either imminent death or permanent unconsciousness. Now, the second document is called the durable power of attorney for healthcare, not to be confused with the general power of attorney for financial matters. The durable power of attorney for healthcare allows you to name someone legally, officially, as your proxy decision maker, so should you ever become incapacitated and cannot make decisions directly. In Iowa law, the proxy decision maker is called an attorney in fact, but that doesn't mean the person has to be a lawyer. And I think that's rather confusing terminology, but that's what they use technically. Okay. Now, a durable power of attorney for healthcare is far broader in scope than the living will. A durable power of attorney for healthcare will go into effect any time you become incapacitated to make decisions, even temporarily. So, for example, if you end up in a car accident and are taken to the hospital unconscious and have somebody named as a proxy officially through a DPA, that proxy can call the shots on your medical treatment in the emergency room. Then when you recover, the decision-making power comes back to you. So a durable power of attorney can go into effect at any stage of your life when you become incapacitated to make decisions, even temporarily, versus a living will, which applies only to the very end of life when you're actively dying. Okay. Now, the durable power of attorney for health care also can cover treatments you want, not just treatments you want to forego, whereas the living will is just about foregoing treatments. Okay? Now, the durable power of attorney for health care is generally considered a better document than the living will. The first time an advance directive developed was the living will, then the durable power of attorney for health care was developed. And it's considered a better document because it gives you a living person to represent you and to evaluate the specifics of the condition you're in. And that should make for better medical treatment decision making. Now again, I've given you a copy of the DPA form developed by the Medical Moral Commission of Dubuque Archdiocese, and I'd just like to walk through that. Now we have on the front cover a Christian affirmation of life, which is an intent to place your decision-making within a faith context. Now we have a sample here. You could write your own, or a parish could write one, or religious communities typically write their own, citing from the constitutions of their community. So again, this is just a sample of what can be done. Now let's look at the form proper. You name the person you want to serve as your proxy decision maker. Okay, well, who should you name? Generally, it should be someone who knows you well, who knows your belief and values, who can accurately predict what you would want done in a particular set of circumstances. Now, very often that's going to be a spouse or an adult child. But some people will choose somebody other than such a close blood relative because they feel that it would be such an emotional strain on an adult child to say, stop the life-sustaining treatment for my parent. And they don't want to put the child through that. So again, it just varies in whom you want to name as your proxy decision maker. Now, it's important to name just one person. I've known of some people who want to designate as a proxy their children John and Mary. Okay, bad idea. Okay. Because John and Mary disagree. Okay? And one of the values of having the durable power of attorney for health care is to have somebody legally named as your decision maker, so in cases of conflict, they have the say. Okay. Now, if you look at the second page of the form proper, you can name an alternate proxy decision maker. And this is an alternate if the first one isn't available. Say you name John as your proxy decision maker and Mary as your alternate. Well, if John is in Europe when you're taken to the hospital, you may not be able to contact John, but Mary is here in Iowa and you can contact her. So it's an either or, not both. Okay? And again, you can either have it notarized or signed by two witnesses. Now, the part I really want to go over is the optional addendum. Now, if you look at the first page of the DPA form, it has specific instructions and statement of desires, which gets back to your question, too. Insert here specific instructions or statements of desires, if any. Okay. Additional sheets may be attached. Now, the question comes up, what should I say? For that reason, we've developed this optional addendum indicating the kinds of specific directives you can give for healthcare decision making. And we've taken three common categories. You have a chronic and or progressively debilitating condition, such as Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, or other dementias, state of prolonged unconsciousness. Second type of situation, you are considered terminally ill. Third type of situation, your death is imminent. Then for each of those categories, there is a possibility of giving specific directives about resuscitation, assisted nutrition and hydration, other types of healthcare interventions like antibiotics, dialysis, and the like, and then finally pain management. Okay, does everybody follow me on this? Now, what's unique about what we put together? Okay, what is this not projecting? Oh, what happened? Signal is lost. Okay. What is unique about the set of choices we put together is that we have formulated them in language that reflects Catholic moral teaching, that reflects the principles we've been talking about this morning. So, for example, in the optional addendum, if you look at the second page of that, assisted nutrition and hydration, 2 feet. Assisted nutrition and hydration should be used whenever I have need of it. However, I want assisted nutrition and hydration withheld or withdrawn if it cannot reasonably be expected to prolong my life, or if it would become excessively burdensome for me, or if it would cause me significant physical discomfort. Okay? So that's explicitly formulated in terms of the Catholic moral teaching on that particular issue. Now, if you look at the Living Well form from the state of Wisconsin, for example. They've got a checkbox. Yes, I want artificial nutrition and hydration. No, I don't want it. Okay. Well, that kind of black and white schema doesn't reflect the nuances of Catholic moral teaching. Yes, there are certain situations where you should provide the artificial nutrition and hydration, but there are other circumstances where you can forego. So in our set, we've reflected explicitly what Catholic tradition says about those kinds of decisions. Or again, other types of healthcare interventions, which refer to such things as being placed on a ventilator, surgery, dialysis, chemotherapy. I want other types of healthcare interventions which offer a reasonable hope of benefiting my health and or contribute to my comfort. I do not want healthcare interventions which are not likely to be beneficial to me, and I do not want healthcare interventions which are excessively burdensome. If a healthcare intervention has been started which proves not to be beneficial or is excessively burdensome, I want it stopped. So here we've stated as the guiding principle the benefits and burdens principle we've been talking about this morning. Now again, there's been concern expressed about giving too specific directives to your agent because you never know exactly what kind of situation you're going to be in. So for example, the advice is never say, I never want to be on a ventilator. Because there are certain circumstances where it might just be temporary and beneficial to you. Here we are just presenting the guiding principle, the general guiding principle, and it's up to your proxy to apply that principle to the particular condition you are in. Or again, look at pain management. I want my caregivers to relieve my pain as much as possible, even if it means that I will be drowsy or sleep more than I otherwise would, or experience decreased mental lucidity. If this is the only way to relieve my pain, and I have had the opportunity to carry out my duties in my relationships with others and to prepare spiritually for death. Okay. So it's not a black and white either or about pain medication, providing it or not. Again, we've got it nuanced to represent the Catholic value of preparing spiritually for death, of fulfilling your responsibilities to other people. So these are examples of what I mean, of our having formulated these directives explicitly to reflect Catholic moral teaching. Now again, you can use this form as it is. You can fill out some parts of it but not leave others blank. Or you can just use this as a model for what you want to write in on your own. Okay, so that's the spirit in which we present this. Now, I think you had shown me, too, a form that was just given you by an attorney with the checkbox approach, okay, and no particular instructions about what to do with it. Okay, not a good idea. Now, in fact, even if you use our optional addendum, I would strongly recommend that you sit down with someone who's a healthcare professional to walk through this with you to explain the choices. Or again, healthcare facilities by federal law are required to have people available who are trained in assisting others in filling out these advanced directives. Often it's somebody from pastoral care or social work. So again, you can go to a healthcare facility and ask the person to walk through these choices with you, to answer your questions, to offer some supplementary explanations. So I would really recommend that you do that kind of thing rather than just trying to fill it out on your own. Yes?
Where it says, now, can either one of these, or where each one says or, I want all available health care and
Yes.
services. Are these both Catholic oriented, or is the or one?
No. Okay, according to Catholic teaching, it's permissible to forego treatments under certain conditions, but it's not mandatory to do so. You can say, I want everything done.
Oh, okay.
So all of those are permissible choices under Catholic teaching. Everything we've got. Yes.
If you fill this all out, then do you give it to the person that you have designated, or do you keep it and just let them know where it is?
Okay, no, you should give, if you execute advanced directives, you should give copies to family members, to people, your healthcare providers. If there's a particular hospital you regularly go to, many of them will now have electronic medical records. They will put them on so that if you're admitted, this automatically comes up on your medical record. So the idea is don't keep it to yourself, distribute it widely. Yes.
What if the person changes their mind on the spot? Like, first they said, I want to be awake and just relieve the pain the best you can. Then the pain becomes too unbearable and they're like, oh, just put me out. You know, I don't care.
Okay.
What happens.
Yes, you can revoke the directives. Let's see, there's some general information, okay, that should have been passed out to you about the durable power of attorney for healthcare. It should have been attached to the form, but it was reproduced separately. Under revocation, a durable power of attorney for healthcare may be revoked at any time and in any manner by which the principal, that is the person who executed, is able to communicate the intent to revoke without regard to mental or physical condition. So yes, this can be changed at any time. And I should have mentioned this too. If you're going to name somebody as your proxy decision maker, make sure you ask them if they're willing to do this. Because I'm serious about this. Cases have occurred where people show up at the hospital and somebody named as a proxy. They call the proxy. The person had no idea they were named in that capacity. Yes?
So is it the proposal you have that you have both a living will and the durable power of attorney for healthcare, or is it one or the other?
Okay. Technically, you can use, if you look at the durable power of attorney for healthcare, the section specific desires in that, you can write in that section what is essentially in the living will. So many people just have the DPA form and just write in some instructions. For example, I've worked with both the Franciscan community in Dubuque and the Trappist in New Melody Abbey, and they just opted for the DPA form. Okay, but again, it's structured in Iowa such that you can do everything with the DPA form you can with a living will, plus a whole lot more. So you can't just get away with the DPA.
I wonder if, say you've been to a hospital and you've already done a living will or you've done something, and then you want to do this DPA, which one takes precedence?
Yeah.
If you go to the hospital and you already have that on file?
Okay, well again, if what you say in the DPA is different from what's in the living will, then you should revoke the living will.
So
Just
when
get
you
that
go to the
taken off.
hospital, if you tell them I have this, but I'm revoking it, and this is what you put in my record now?
Exactly. Okay. Now, just a few more points. Okay. Now, to execute an advance directive, either a living will or a durable power of attorney for healthcare, you may go to an attorney, but you need not. Again, by federal law, all healthcare facilities are required to have people trained to assist you in filling out advance directives, and they'll do it for free. Plus, I think I would feel more comfortable just filling out this document with someone who's medically trained. Because they could explain things about these various conditions that a lawyer just doesn't have the background to do. Okay? Now, you should periodically review your advance directives to make sure they still reflect new issues. Okay. Again, if somebody makes it out when they're 40, they may feel, I would never want to live in these kinds of conditions, but then you hit 75. So again, these are documents you do need to periodically review and update. There was a question back there.
The question is, let's say one of these documents, you go to Mercy Clinic and you say, I would like you to put this one in my file. They scan it. Then I have an accident and I go to Mercy Hospital. Would they automatically be able to pull that out of Mercy Clinic?
Okay.
No, they're separate from separate things.
Then how can they ever access it if you don't have anybody around?
Okay, now I'm not familiar with the systems that you're talking
The
about.
hospitals and the
physician offices are separate entities. They don't read each other. You have to place it both places.
Okay, the way their electronic system is set up. Now, in other places, you can have electronic transmission from one facility to
You
another.
could ask your physician to send it
So
to the
say
medical records
hospital
at the
would say,
hospital,
"Who's your
and they will do
physician?"
so.
Hospital would say, who's your physician, they should deal with.
No. You can ask your physician to send that information to the hospital, and they will send it to the medical records.
Saturday night.
No, when you take it into your doctor, ask them to transfer it over to the hospital too, and they can do so.
I'm being sarcastic here, but it's Saturday night and I'm in Idaho, I'm gonna die. See what I'm saying?
Okay.
Well, unless the kids don't have a copy of
Right.
it.
Okay, again, it's my understanding that if you've got electronic medical records, that they can be rather easily transmitted from one location to another.
If it's requested.
Yeah. Now, again, sometimes when people execute advance directives, they'll have like an ID card indicating that they got it, that they keep with their driver's license. Because say if you're in an accident out of state or even in state, they'll try to identify you. One of the first things they look for is your driver's license. If you've got a card in there with your driver's license that they've got an advance directive, that's a notification to them that they should file it.
That's a good point. That's solid.
Yes.
My parents wintered in Arizona, my in-laws wintered in Texas for many, many years. We were told that doing so, they should carry them with them. You know, in their glove box, that they should have it in Arizona, Texas. Because what good does it do in a safety deposit box in Iowa?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, never put them in safety
I thought
deposit.
that was really a good.
Yes, yes.
It
Also,
made absolutely no sense to have it sitting here.
okay. Also say if somebody winters for several months in another state, you should make sure that the Iowa Advance Directive will be validly recognized in the other state. Now, that's usually true, but it's good to make sure.